He let his mother control our lives for 10 years, so I turned every attack into evidence, paid back the funeral she weaponized, and took her to court. This is how I made him choose health over harm, and won. I caught my boyfriend's mother texting me from his phone the night our son's ashes came home. She thought she was clever, swapping pronouns, mimicking his punctuation, baiting me into a fight I would never forget. But when I replied with a lie only he and I knew, the bubbles kept moving, moving, and then stopped. That's when I realized. The woman who paid for our child's funeral had been using my grief like a doorway, stepping in and out of my house. My relationship, my sanity. I decided that night that something had to break. It wasn't going to be me. If you've ever been told you're overreacting, that it's just family, that you should swallow the insult because that's what good partners do, stick around. Because this isn't a story about me asking a man to choose between his mother and me. It's the slow, surgical separation of the life I built from the rot that tried to live inside it. It's the part where I stopped whispering, please, and started saying no. If stories about boundary pushers finally getting consequences keep you listening, tap like so more people hear it too. Subscribe if you want weekly, long-form justice stories where the doormat learns to lock the door and keep the key. When I met Daniel, he was 23 and hopeful in the way people are before life chisels its initials into them. I was 30 and already a mother, not by biology, but by instinct. I knew how to show up. I knew how to hold a schedule together with paper clips and a prayer. How to stretch a paycheck to cover diapers and dinner and the unexpected tire that always blows on the month you can least afford it. He was bright and raw. He needed a compass. I had a map. His mother, Andrea, arrived later. Not physically at first, more like a smell that comes before rain. In his stories, she hovered. A woman who missed recitals, let holidays fall off the calendar, and then called after midnight with apologies that sounded like lullabies. She's trying now, he'd say, holding his phone like a newborn. She just didn't know how before. We moved slowly into the future. Our first apartment had thin walls and a stubborn radiator. We learned each other's quiets. His came with headphones. Mine came with laundry. We were different in that gentle, promising way that says, we still could fit if we both keep carving. Our daughter, June, arrived in early spring. She was stubborn from the first contraction, a small storm with dark hair and the kind of stare that makes you feel like you owe her money. I loved her as if I'd been born to meet her. Daniel did too, when he wasn't apologizing to someone else for loving us. Andrea didn't come to the hospital. She sent a plant, a peace lily. If you can imagine, the universe has a sense of humor. The card said, hope she brings you both together. I watered it like a prayer. Every time a leaf crisped, I thought, maybe this is what happens to women who stay too long in dry rooms. Andrea's first real visit happened when June was 4 months old. She stood in our doorway with a bag of groceries and eyes that looked directly past me to the baby. There she is, she said to June, not to me. There's my second chance. She did not say congratulations. She did not say my name. That if you've ever seen someone scan a room for the easiest place to set themselves down, you saw Andrea. She set herself down on my daughter, her cheeks, her future, her right to exist. She looks like him, but not entirely, Andrea murmured, tilting her head. We should do a test, just to be sure, for medical records. The word test hung like a mosquito in a dark room. You don't see it land, only feel the itch. Daniel laughed like she was joking. He always laughed first, hoping humor could be a bridge with planks of air. I stared at the woman in my doorway and realized she wasn't a presence. She was an audit. In her mind, everything we had would be itemized until she found the numbers she wanted. The test never happened. What had happened was quieter, meaner. She refused to say June was his. When she sent Christmas gifts that year, the tag said, to June, with no dad's name attached. At Easter, she posted a photo of Daniel as a baby with the caption, some babies just carry their father's spirit. Others, I'm not so sure. The comments filled with praise for her honesty and mama bear instincts. I watched Daniel reading it all, the light in him dimming like a porch bulb someone forgot to replace. Then our son, Eli, came. Fragile in the way boys can be in families where men are either saints or scapegoats. He had a respiratory condition we learned to manage, steam during colds, vigilant checkups. The secret drawer of prescription samples that feels illegal even when it isn't. We took turns sleeping on the floor by his crib when the coughs came, the humidifier humming like a small engine, our bodies learning the circumference of fear. Andrea showed up then, not with help, but with commentary. She told me how to hold a nebulizer and mispronounced the medication. She told me I was too anxious. She told Daniel I was making the baby dependent on me in a way that doesn't bode well for boys. If you know, you know. There are some sentences only raised by wolves women ever hear. They come wrapped in concern and smell like blood. The day Eli died, the world split along a seam I didn't know was there. Fast, merciless, a perfect storm in a tiny chest. The doctor said words that made geography of grief: pulmonary, aspiration, acute. I learned how many people it takes to carry the end of a life small enough to have fit inside me once. Andrea paid for the funeral. She did it with the grandness of people who have never been told no in public. "Let me," she said, voice trembling in that performance cry way. "I need to do this for my boy." She wrapped herself in black and tragedy and my son's name like a shawl she could wear to every future argument. Grief changes the way you hear ordinary sounds. Dishes clink different. The refrigerator hum stabs. The day after we brought home the little urn from the funeral home, Andrea texted Daniel, "Make sure she's not using this to keep you there." That was the first time I knew my pain was a tool to her. The second time was later, when Daniel stepped into the shower and his phone lit up and vibrated with 3 new messages from the contact labeled Mom. "Tell her you're going to the store and don't come back. I'll help you with custody later. I paid for your son's funeral because I knew she wouldn't be responsible. You don't owe her anything. There is a glass shard in me from that day that I have never pulled out. You'd think that would be enough, that one person's cruelty would bounce me to a different orbit. But grief made me slow, sticky with needing to hold the things I still had. A daughter who liked to sleep with her hand on my jaw. A man who was half grown and half drowning. A house full of small noises I recognized. Andrea realized how far she could go before someone got hurt. So she went further. She started calling CPS. The first time I thanked them as they left. "I'm glad you came," I said, showing cupboards. The calendar with pediatrician appointments written like an honor roll. The baby gate we still hadn't dismantled because June liked to pretend it was a store counter. The social worker saw a tidy house and tired eyes and left a pamphlet with a smile that said she'd been sent on a snipe hunt. The second time I cried after the door closed. The third time I sat on the floor and felt old. The fifth time, when the kindly supervisor told me, "We won't be coming out again unless there's something credible. Someone is misusing the system." I stood and looked at my reflection in the microwave door and did not recognize the line of my mouth. Andrea also mastered the art of texting as other women. "Hey, I had a great time last night." Came a number with a city code we didn't know. "When can I see you again?" Another. "Tell your girlfriend I exist, coward." Screenshots became her currency. She would forward fake conversations to a group chat she'd built like a little throne room. Cousins, old friends from church, Daniel's former babysitter. "Hate to be the one to say this," she'd type, the signature of every gossip. "But he deserves better than a paranoid liar." Daniel did something men do when they're terrified of losing the last adoring face in their life. He made himself small. He started laughing at things that weren't funny. He stopped bringing up the hurt until it was a joke, and then the joke never landed. When I said, "I need you to set boundaries," he answered with silence that became over time a second soundtrack in our house. June's cartoons, the dishwasher, and that silence. Like a third roommate who never pays rent but takes the biggest bedroom. There were good days. All troubled houses have them. Spots of sunlight on the carpet you rearrange your whole life to sit in. June lost her first tooth, and we folded tiny origami cranes as tooth fairy confetti. We planted tulip bulbs because grief demands you put things in the ground and hope they come up beautiful. We laughed sometimes, real laughter, the kind that makes you tilt your head back. But even joy can get tired when it has to push past someone sitting in the doorway. The night that changed everything began with a ping. Daniel was in the shower. June was asleep with markers on her fingers from a drawing that had gotten away from her. The urn rested on the mantel, a little metal certainty in a room full of moving parts. My phone lit. "You know I never stopped loving you. I made a mistake choosing her. Come over." It was from Daniel's number. I stared, something cold and clean washing through me. The next message came 3 dots later. "I'll be at my mom's." She's finally right about you. Daniel's shower ran. Steam collected on the mirror. I did the thing I always do when the room starts to tilt. I forced myself to do something ordinary. I folded a dish towel. I set out Eli's baby book, the one I sometimes opened to remember he had been real in ways no one could debate. That I typed back, fingers steady. I'm glad you feel that way. Meet me at the corner where we kissed the first time. Alone. I watched the bubble. It appeared, then stalled. Then another message came. I knew it. Leaving your kid to chase a man. Disgusting. Save those tears for the judge. The shower turned off. The bathroom door opened. Daniel came out with a towel around his waist, and that dazed look men have when they leave a warm room for a cold one. I held his phone up. Your mom is sloppy. I said. He crowded my words with nervous chuckles. She worries about me. No, I said. She wants me gone. I put the phone on the counter, screen up, those last 3 messages like fingerprints on a window. And she wants you back in her pocket, so tight you'll forget you ever had your own. Daniel's face did something I hated. It closed. Not in defiance, but in dread. He was a boy again, looking down a hallway for a parent that never came when called. She's all I've got, he said, and there it was, that old family myth. We carry it like an heirloom even when it doesn't match the furniture. You have a family, I said. You just don't act like it. He didn't get mad. He never got mad, not in the normal way. He went still. He did a little laugh that was mostly exhale. Then he put on sweatpants, grabbed his keys, and told me he needed a drive to clear his head. June snored softly in the other room. The urn watched. The peace lily drooped. Go, I said. But when you come back, we're going to decide what kind of house this is. He nodded without looking at me. And the front door clicked like a period. I stood in the kitchen and realized I was in a house with 2 front doors. One I controlled with locks and schedules and recipes, and one that lived in the phones and memories of 2 people who had never learned to say no to each other. If you live long enough with open doors, you forget you can close them. I opened the freezer and took out a Ziploc bag full of coins. Laundry money, tooth fairy money, the metallic sound of small savings. I counted out quarters on the counter until they made a shape that felt like a spine. That was the night I decided to stop asking for a choice and start building. One that if you've never had to prove you're a good mother to the government because someone used the system like a prank call. You don't know the particular humiliation of photographing a full fridge. You don't understand how quickly tenderness turns into paperwork. I learned. I became an archivist of my own life. The first page of the blue notebook I bought at the drugstore says, in block letters, evidence is love's last language, dates, times, numbers, screenshots, the number of minutes between one ping and the next. If Daniel came home smelling like Andrea's dryer sheets. If June asked why Grandma says Daddy is better without us. I recorded it in pen that bled through the cheap paper. A bruise on the next page. I also learned the law. Do you know what happens when someone makes repeated false reports to CPS? There are internal notes. There is a phrase called vexatious reporting. There are supervisors with soft voices who will tell you, if you ask politely and document your own trauma politely, that yes, they see patterns, and yes, they can flag a file so a caller's name means something next time. I met one of those supervisors over lukewarm coffee in a government building that smelled like carpet cleaner and custody exchanges. She wore a cardigan with pilling at the elbows and the tired kindness of women who have seen every flavor of mean. You are doing nothing wrong, she said, flipping through my binder. Keep the records. If she escalates, we'll be ready. Escalation was Andrea's native language. She started showing up to school by accident. Once with a bag of extra snacks for June and a note to the teacher that said, I'm not sure she gets enough at home. Once with a flyer for a summer camp. I'm paying for. So just apply. Only to CC herself on the email to the director, writing, I am the grandmother and de facto guardian. Please direct decisions through me. The school counselor called me. I think Grandma loves her grandson and son very much, she said carefully. But I also think she's confusing proximity with parenting. We've got your back. We'll need a list of who is allowed to pick up and who isn't. I sent the list. Andrea was not on it. I sent a certified letter to Andrea with the same boundary in black ink that smelled like relief. She posted it on Facebook with the caption, when a bitter woman keeps a grandmother from her grandchild, everyone loses. Comments bloomed like mold. I kept that screenshot too. Daniel lowered in and out of the conflict like weather. Some days he stood beside me, read the binder, nodded at the insanity. Other days he got lost in the guilt maze Andrea built for him years ago, the one where every path leads back to you owe me. Sometimes he slept at her place to keep the peace and came home with that fragile, breathless guilt. He would kiss the top of my head and whisper, "I'm trying. Try here," I'd say, tapping the binder. Then something happened that made the binder feel holy. Andrea filed a concern with our pediatrician's office, claiming she'd seen signs of neglect during a visit, which didn't happen. She'd seen our kitchen through a FaceTime she'd been invited to for June's bedtime story. The office called me, apologetic. "We are required to document it," they said. "Would you like to add a statement?" I brought the binder. The receptionist, a woman with glitter nail polish and the most patient smile I've ever seen, treated my pages like a living thing. She squeezed my hand. "Some people like to act like doctors' offices are courtrooms," she whispered. "We aren't, but we do know how to write good notes." There is a particular thrill that comes when the person hurting you tries to use a system, and the system, by some small miracle, remembers it was built for protection. It is a quiet thrill. There are no fireworks, just a soft click inside. Another door closing. Daniel, meanwhile, seemed welded to the threshold. He started therapy. It was my condition for staying. "If you want this family," I told him, "you will learn a language that isn't just the sounds your mother makes when someone tells her no." He found a counselor, a man in his 40s with eyebrows like hedges and metaphor-laden wisdom. He gave Daniel words like enmeshment and triangulation. Daniel brought them home like souvenirs. "He says I mistake control for involvement," Daniel told me, picking at a thread on the couch. "He says I laugh when I'm scared." I wanted to be kind. I wanted to shake him. Both once lived side by side until neither could breathe. Still, progress. Daniel stopped forwarding Andrea's texts. He changed his password. He put his phone on Do Not Disturb after 10 p.m. like a person trying to learn sleep again. I rewarded every good behavior with something warm and small. A favorite meal, a foot rub, the absence of a lecture. We were trying to parent ourselves into being the people our child deserved to remember. So of course Andrea found a leak. Her next maneuver was almost impressive in its audacity. A group text arrived with a number of participants that made my eyes cross. Daniel, me, Andrea, 3 of her sisters. A family friend who once set out candles at Eli's service like she was staging a photo shoot. And a pastor from Andrea's church, someone I'd never met. On behalf of the family, the pastor wrote, "We have concerns for Daniel's spiritual and emotional well-being. It's time he honors his mother as commanded. We invite you both to counseling at our church, mediated by myself." I read it 3 times. It felt like getting surprise served by religion. I typed, deleted, typed, deleted. Then I wrote, "Thank you for your concern. We will not be attending. Please remove me from future group messages about my family." Aunt number 1 replied with a gif of someone rolling their eyes. Aunt number 2 wrote, "If you left, none of this would be happening." Andrea wrote, "You can't keep him forever." Daniel didn't write anything. He came home, sat on the edge of our bed, and put his head in his hands. "I can't breathe," he said. "You can?" I said. "But not over there." He took a long, necessary breath. "She paid for the funeral," he added, not as a defense of her, but as a confession of his own debt. "And I gave birth to our children," I said, gently. "We all pay for things." He nodded. He cried. If you've never seen a man cry with his mouth closed to avoid waking a child, you don't know how soundless sorrow can be. I held him until his shoulders stopped speaking. That night, the text from his phone happened. The trap worked. Andrea outed herself. Evidence. Confirmations. Every lie had a shadow now that I could have left then. If this were a different story, I might have. But revenge, real revenge, isn't always leaving. Sometimes it's staying long enough to make sure the collapse hurts in the right direction. Sometimes it's building a lifeboat with receipts and letting the other boat sink under the weight of its own leaks. The next morning I called a lawyer that I found her through a friend who'd left a marriage where the mother-in-law tried to write the custody schedule. Her name was Claire. She had gray hair, red lipstick, and a tone I recognized from nurses and bailiffs. Steady, unimpressed by drama, very impressed by documents that I brought the binder. Claire smiled like a hunting cat. "You've done half my work," she said, sliding a legal pad my way. "Here's the other half." We outlined steps: a formal no-contact letter to Andrea citing harassment, a report to the police documenting the impersonation texts and the repeated false CPS calls, a petition for a civil harassment restraining order if the behavior continued, an allocation of parental responsibilities that hinged on Daniel's therapy progress, and a framework for parallel parenting if we split. You don't have to file anything yet, she said, but you will have them ready. She also gave me a phrase I would use later, like a blade and a bandage: third-party interference. It was the legal name for a mother-in-law who tries to be a spouse. It meant something to judges. It sounded clinical, not petty. It translated creepy into court. Your leverage isn't screaming, Claire said, tapping the binder. Your leverage is credibility. You are the reliable narrator. Don't lose that. Back at home, I began the second prong of the plan. I made it boring to harass me that I stopped replying to any message that wasn't logistics about pickup times or school plays. I used phrases like "noted" and "per our last message," and "that will not work for us." When Andrea posted online, I didn't read it. I had 3 friends do that, and only send me what might matter legally. I set my phone to filter unknown numbers to voicemail. I changed the alarm code. I told the school's secretaries that if Andrea arrived, they were to call the office, not me, so a written record existed. Boredom is a boundary. Bullies starve without your reaction. Andrea didn't starve. She hunted elsewhere. She turned her attention fully on Daniel. Calls at 6 a.m. "Are you awake?" Calls at noon. "I made your favorite." Calls at midnight. "She'll leave you, you know." When he didn't answer, she said I was controlling the phone. When he did, she rewarded him with a quietness that felt like a nap. He started sneaking visits again, then confessing, then apologizing, then doing it again. The cycle is an old, ugly wheel. It rolls over everyone's toes. 3 months into the planner's version of war, I scheduled a family therapy session that was really an intervention with an audience of 1. I set the scene like a stage manager. Chairs facing each other. Water on the table. June at a friend's house. Phones in a basket like we were entering a courtroom. I invited Daniel. I kept my voice as clean as a ledger. "Today we're having a choice," I said. "Not a fight. Not a crisis. A decision." We sat. He nodded, eyes red, a boy in a man's hoodie. "I am done asking you to pick me over her," I said. "That was a trap. I'm done with traps." I slid the binder to the center. "I'm asking you to pick health over harm." He stared at the pages. He touched a tab like it might burn him. "You can continue a relationship with your mother," I said. "But it will look like this: no unannounced visits. No group ambushes. No triangulation. If she has a problem with me, she discusses it with me or not at all. She never impersonates you again. She never contacts the school without our consent. She attends therapy with you to learn boundaries with a professional present. If she cannot do those things, you will limit contact to public settings twice a month with a witness, and you will not bring our daughter to those visits until a therapist agrees it is safe." He swallowed. He shook. He whispered, "She'll hate me." "She already does," I said softly. "Because you left her once and she thinks she gets you back if she ruins everything else." He wiped his face. He stared into the middle distance where men place their childhood and call it fate. Then, because he is not evil but he is still learning, he asked the question I knew was coming. "And if I can't?" I slid the second folder. The one with Claire's neat handwriting on top. The one that said, "If not, then." "In that case," I said, and my voice did not shake, "we will separate. We will use parallel parenting tools to make sure June is stable. You will have a relationship with your mother as you see fit. But you will have it without using me and our daughter as cover and collateral." He flinched like I had thrown water on him. "You'd really do it," he said. "I'd really do it," I said. "Because I'm already alone." The silence after a truth lands is not empty. It is packed with all the unspent arguments that now have nowhere to go. Daniel looked at the binder like an altar. He looked at the door like an escape. Then he did something unusual. He didn't laugh. He picked up his phone and texted Andrea. "Mom, I love you. I'm working on boundaries with my therapist. I will not talk about my name with you. I will not let you talk about her to me. If you impersonate me or contact our daughter's school again, I will block your number for 30 days. I am choosing my family. 3 dots. 3 dots. 3 dots. Who wrote that for you?" "She did." "You're lost. I'm your mother, and I know best. If she leaves you, don't come to me. He handed me the phone. "Document it," he said. I did. If you think coercive control disappears because someone typed a sentence, you've never tried to close a door with someone's foot still in it. Andrea would wedge herself into every crack. But my plan had a phase 3 I had been saving. The way you save a fire. Extinguisher under a sink and hope you never need it. Started with a funeral receipt and ended with a letter from a judge. I pulled out the folder where I kept every invoice from the week Eli died. There is a smell to funeral paperwork, like ink and lilies in the inside of a man's suit. I spread the receipts like tarot cards. Chapel, cremation, officiant's honorarium, floral arrangements I didn't remember choosing, programs someone designed in a font too cheerful for death. Andrea had paid. She had made sure everyone knew. It was the ring she kept twisting on her finger. My boy, my money, my devotion. Claire's advice came back. Make the leverage boring. Make it arithmetic. I called the funeral home. Can you issue a statement of account paid? I asked. I need itemization. The director, a patient man with soft vowels, printed and emailed within the hour. I added interest at the legal rate, not a penny more. I asked Claire to draft a letter. Dear Ms., last name, as of date. You paid the following expenses for the funeral of Eli, last name. Attached is an itemized list totaling $X.XX. Enclosed is a cashier's check in the amount of $X.XX representing full repayment. Future references to this expense as leverage in personal disputes will be documented as harassment. Sincerely, my name. CC. Attorney. Daniel's full name. I didn't mail it yet. Revenge is timing. You want it to land between their inhale and exhale. Next, the police report. Not a dramatic, siren-in-the-night event. A daytime appointment at the non-emergency desk with an officer who looked 20 and practiced. Impersonation via text, harassment, repeated false reports, I said, laying out my binder like a buffet. He was respectful. He assigned a case number. He explained that without a direct threat, consequences would likely be a warning or citation first. But having a report on file matters, he said. Judges like breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs. I smiled at the term. I had a whole loaf. The last piece of the plan involved light. Bullies hate light. Andrea thrived in private rooms and group texts where she directed the narrative with the breezy cruelty of people who assume they'll never be called to the microphone. So I built a microphone. June's school hosted a Healthy Families Night in May, a clever event with a potluck and a panel of local professionals talking about boundaries, online safety, and mental health. The flyer sat on our counter for a week before I realized what it was, an invitation from the universe to stop being an island. I called the counselor. Would it be inappropriate, I asked, if I asked a question during Q&A about extended family interference? Hypothetically. She paused, then said, it would be brave. She asked if I wanted to meet beforehand. I did. We crafted it cleanly. No names, no finger-pointing, just the shape of our problem held in the open where other people could nod. The night of the event, the cafeteria smelled like casseroles and construction paper. Andrea showed up. Of course she did. She sat near the back with an entourage of 2 aunts and the pastor, like a royal court disguised as PDA. When the microphone passed, my hands shook, but not in fear. In recognition, I said, what do you do when a grandparent confuses access with ownership? When they undermine the parents, contact schools without permission, impersonate a parent online? How do you protect a child's stability while allowing relationships that are healthy? Heads turned. Some eyes softened. Some hardened. The counselor answered beautifully. Grandparents can be a gift. Interference is not a gift. Documentation, clear boundaries, and teamwork between school and parents help. Also, understanding the legal term third-party interference can be empowering. Our school supports court orders and parents set boundaries. We want children to feel safe. I felt Andrea's stare between my shoulder blades like an old draft. She didn't stand. She didn't speak. She left early. The next morning, a text from an unknown number pinged. You didn't have to embarrass her like that. I replied. Per my last message, please direct all concerns to my attorney. Have a peaceful day. Block. Document. Boredom. Time for the letter. I mailed the cashier's check and the repayment note by certified mail. I sent a duplicate to Claire. I set an alert on my calendar for the expected delivery date, at 10:13 a.m. 2 days later, I got a call from Andrea. I let it go to voicemail. The transcript read like a barked labyrinth. How dare you? This was a gift. You think money fixes you. You think you can buy your way out of what you did to my son. Don't you ever. She hung up. Then she texted Daniel. She humiliated me. She made the funeral a transaction. He wrote back. New words he'd learned casing his fragile courage. It was always a transaction to you. Consider it settled. For once, she didn't reply. Phase 3.5 was tech. I bought Daniel and me 2 small, identical notebooks, a signal list, a shared language. We wrote down triggers. When she calls late, when she comments on parenting, when she uses money as leverage, when she blames. Next to each, a pre-decided action. Ignore, copy my name. On reply, reply with template number 2. We won't be discussing that. Block for 72 hours. People think boundaries are a mood. They're not. They're a calendar entry. Then I set a trap for the impersonation. Different from the first, more official. I created a unique phrase that only Daniel and I would use to refer to an event from our early relationship. Typed it on a piece of paper, photographed it, printed the photo, and asked our therapist to sign and date the back. Anytime a text came in from Daniel that smelled wrong, I'd ask for that phrase. If it wasn't correctly returned, we'd attach the signed photo and report the instance with the ongoing case number. Boring. Brutal. Andrea took the bait within a week. Meet me. Came a late-night text. Alone. I asked for the phrase. A minute passed. 2. Then, you are sick. I forwarded the exchange with the signed evidence to the officer. He thanked me. He left a voicemail for Andrea. She stopped impersonating. For a while, the day the certified letter's green return receipt came back, signed in Andrea's sharp hand, I felt a loosening in my own chest like a knot finally acknowledging gravity. It wasn't joy. It was math. She no longer owned a story she'd been waving like a flag. IT didn't cure her. But it took away the trumpet. Phase 4 needed pain. Not mine. Consequence for her. Not vengeance as in ruin her life, but justice as in put the weight where it belongs. There was one place she still loved to act invincible. Church. The pastor who'd group texted us preached a Mother's Day sermon that could have been subtitled, When a Son Forgets Who Raised Him. I listened to the recording online while folding laundry. My breath doing a thing I recognized from when I was a kid and grown-ups lied in God's voice. I wrote a letter. Not to the pastor. To the church board. Calm, factual, non-litigious in tone, very litigious in subtext. I attached the police case number, the CPS supervisor's note about vexatious reporting, the school counselor's statement, with her permission, about unauthorized contact, and the repayment receipt. I did not ask them to discipline. I asked them to update their counseling practices. When mediating family disputes, please ensure you have consent from all parties and avoid enabling third-party interference. Your member, Andrea, last name, has repeatedly violated boundaries in ways that harm a child. Bullies hate light. Institutions hate liability. I hit send. A week later, an email. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We are revising our policies. Andrea stopped tagging the church in her posts about me. She posted less. She called Daniel more. He didn't answer more. Then June asked a question that told me my daughter had taken her own notes. Is Grandma mad at you or at me? She said, voice small, hand on my jaw where babies put their hands to say belonging. Neither, I said, and for once it was true. She's mad at boundaries. What are boundaries? Asked June. Doors you're allowed to close, I said. Even with people you love. She nodded like she was putting a new tool in her pocket. I kissed her forehead and wrote the line down in my binder because sometimes your own mouth hands you a lifeline. The last domino I lined up was the restraining order. Not because I wanted one, because I wanted to be ready when she made it necessary. Claire told me judges like patterns and proximity, repeated breaking of stated boundaries, attempts to control or impersonate, interference with school. Andrea was a pattern of violations with lipstick. The trigger arrived like a gift wrapped in rage. Andrea showed up at June's school with cupcakes on a random Thursday. She argued at the office when the secretary explained she wasn't on the pickup list. She cried. She called me an unfit mother in a lobby full of first graders' artwork. The principal walked her out and wrote an incident report. The counselor called me from the copy machine. I know you're documenting. We will be your witnesses. That night, Andrea posted, when the state gets in the way of family, you know evil is winning. The comments chanted amen. I filed the request for a harassment restraining order the next morning, attached to our existing police report. With the school's statement like a signature, that a hearing date landed on the calendar in the thick, important ink of courts. The paper said she had to stay away from the school and our home pending the hearing. You would think I'd sleep. Instead, my body, trained to anticipate the next ambush, kept vigil. Quiet adrenaline tastes like metal. If you know, you know. The day before the hearing, Daniel got another text. If you do this to me, Andrea wrote, I will tell the judge things that will end her. Don't test me. He showed me. Document it, he said. We printed. We packed the binder. We circled the date like a planet. If you've never stood before a judge with your life bound in a 3-ring binder, you don't know the sacredness of hole punches. I wore navy. Claire wore steel. Daniel wore a tie I ironed like a truce. Andrea wore pearls and the practiced grief of women who know tears move furniture in certain rooms. The judge had the face of a person who reads people for 8 hours a day. He was neither kind nor cruel. He was a faucet. Turn him with facts. Get a measured stream of justice. That Andrea's opening statement was a poem of victimhood. I have been excluded, she said. I paid for my grandson's funeral. I only want to help. She hates me. She keeps my son away. She's unstable. She makes him choose. The pastor sat behind her in moral support. The aunts whispered. Claire didn't look at Andrea. She didn't need to. She looked at the judge and let the binder speak. Tab 1. Impersonation texts, with the signed phrase document and the officer's report. Tab 2. CPS supervisor's note on vexatious reporting, dates matching Andrea's calls. Tab 3. School incident report and counselor's statement about unauthorized contact. Tab 4. Certified repayment of funeral expenses with a receipt signed by Andrea. Tab 5. Screenshots of group texts inviting church mediation without my consent. Tab 6. Therapist's letter, Daniels, describing enmeshment and triangulation and his plan for boundaries moving forward. Claire spoke like she was ordering coffee. Your Honor, this is not a grandmother being denied access. This is third-party interference that compromises a child's stability and the co-parent's relationship. My client requests a narrowly tailored, 1-year harassment restraining order limiting Ms. last name from contacting the child's school, impersonating either party, or discussing the child or the co-parents online or via group messages. The goal is not punishment, but protection and clarity. Andrea sputtered. She's turning my own son against me. The judge lifted a hand. Ms. last name, you will have your turn. Daniel stood. His voice surprised me. It had shoulders. I love my mother, he said, eyes on the bench, not the pearls in the second row. I also love my partner and our daughter. I have not been a good boundary setter. I am learning. When my mother impersonated me and called CPS repeatedly, it hurt my family. I am asking the court to help me say no. There is a sound rooms make when the person everyone assumed would comply decides not to. It is not applause. It is a quiet that nods. Andrea's attorney, newly retained, in shoes that squeaked, tried the old math. This is a domestic dispute best handled privately, he said. Grandmothers only want to help. The judge's face did not move. This court sees plenty of help, he said. He turned pages. He asked procedural questions. He underlined. Then he ruled. Temporary order becomes final, he said. 1 year. Ms. last name. You will not contact the school. You will not impersonate either petitioner. You will not make reports to agencies without credible, new information. A pattern has been established. You will not discuss the minor child or the petitioners online. You may have contact with your son, Mr. last name, at his discretion, but not with the child unless both parents consent in writing. Violations will result in sanctions. He looked at me and then at Daniel. He looked at my binder. You did the work, he said, one human sentence sneaking out. Use the piece well. Andrea made a sound like someone had closed a trunk on her hand. The pastor frowned. The aunts shook their heads. I felt nothing. Not triumph. Not sorrow. A confirmation, like a bell tolling the hour. The door, at last, clicked. The fallout was not fireworks. It was logistics. Andrea tested the edges like a kid seeing how far they can walk out into the ocean before a wave catches their knees. She posted a Facebook status about free speech that vanished within an hour. She sent Daniel a photo of a casserole, then a photo of herself crying, then silence. He told his therapist about the silence. The therapist said, "That's not your emergency." June asked if Grandma would come to her dance recital. "Not this year," I said. "We're making sure it's safe first." She accepted that at 5 faster than some adults at 50 accept the simplest no. Our house reorganized itself around the absence. The peace lily sprouted a new leaf, the first in months. The urn remained on the mantel, heavy and light as ever. We started family dinners again that didn't include someone hiding in the bathroom to text. Daniel laughed sometimes in ways that weren't apologies. He also relapsed into old habits, less and less, then less again. When he did, the binder didn't come out. The calendar did. "Block for 72 hours, he'd say. Template reply number 2. He used the language like splints while the bones knitted that we mailed a final letter through Claire. Not to Andrea, but to ourselves. A parenting plan that named the boundaries like furniture in a room so we could stop bumping into them. We used an app to communicate logistics. We met with the school and updated files. We made it boring to be a family. Boredom turned out to be a good parent. Revenge, when it finally lands, rarely looks like a cackle. It looks like a quiet breakfast where your child asks for seconds and you realize you didn't look at the door even once. It looks like your partner choosing a seat beside you, not across from you. It looks like a plant turning toward the sun because it can. The last time Andrea called me was an accidental dial. Her breath hit the line and then it clicked off. I stared at the missed call and felt not much. I saved the log in a folder named for peace of mind and went back to cutting grapes in half. Months later, Mother's Day arrived. Daniel woke up early and made pancakes with June. They brought me a tray with a flower in a cup and a card that said, in June's lopsided handwriting, "Thanks for closing doors." I laughed. I cried. I took a picture of us and saved it next to 1,000 screenshots of what it cost to get this morning. Love, documented. Andrea posted a photo of herself holding a toddler at church, someone else's grandchild, I realized a second later. The caption said, "A mother's love never gives up." The comments sang. I scrolled past. Let her perform in rooms that still clap. We were building rooms that didn't need an audience that a year later we went back to court. We submitted compliance records, 0 violations. We requested to keep the school/no impersonation orders in place informally through a stipulation both parties could sign, thus avoiding extensions that felt like war. Andrea's new attorney, a calmer man, agreed. She signed. Her signature looked tired. We walked out of the courthouse into a day that smelled like summer's first try. "Do you ever think about leaving?" Daniel asked, not as a dare, but as a check-in, a man learning not to assume. "Sometimes," I said, "because truth builds trust and trust builds houses. But you're doing the work." And this, I gestured at the sky, our daughter in the back seat asking for ice cream at 10 a.m., the binder tucked under my arm with fewer tabs now. This is what I wanted. Not perfection, not permission, partnership. He slipped his hand in mine, not like a child in a parking lot, but like a man on a path. "Thank you for making me choose health," he said. "I didn't make you choose," I replied, smiling. "I just closed the wrong doors." That night, after June fell asleep with glitter on her cheeks from a school art project, I took the binder out one last time. I removed the tabs one by one and put them in a box labeled done. I kept the spine, though. I placed it on a shelf above the peace lily, a reminder that love is sometimes paperwork, that revenge is sometimes handing someone back the debt they tried to keep around your neck and saying, "This belongs to you." The house we live in now has one front door. It locks. It opens. It is ours that I used to think revenge was a loud thing. Fire. Fury. A grand speech in a kitchen while the villain backs away into the light of their own shame. Sometimes it is. More often, it's a stack of papers and a willingness to be boring longer than your opponent can be cruel. It's money repaid at legal interest so the leverage runs out of breath. It's a judge who isn't impressed by tears that don't come with truth. It's a child who learns no is not a love letter's opposite, but one of its forms that if you're listening and living with your own Andrea, someone who mistakes access for ownership, who demands to be the sun while you orbit, here's your map, document, dull, deliver. Love is a boundary. Revenge is peace that lasts. If this helped you picture your own door closing, drop a comment with boundaries so I know you're with me. Like the video to push it to others who need a blueprint. And subscribe for more long-form justice where the quiet wins are the loudest. Thank you for watching this story on True Tales Hub. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our next story that we post new tales twice a day, and each one comes with unexpected twists you won't see coming.